Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Happy November, and welcome to Super Regionals. My name's Tom Battinger, joined here by the best of tacos, and we're going to be your hosts for today, well, at least the first half of the day, because we have a long, long day. First of all, Taco, welcome to the postseason. How you feeling?
I'm very excited. I think this is probably the moment we've all been waiting for. Super Regionals has been lurking right around the corner, and now it is finally here.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where, like, you know, this is why we do it, right? When it comes down to land time, when it comes down to see all these folks, it's just a plain lot of fun. And that, like I said, that's why we're here. Very excited to really get things going on. Of course, before we get into things, just want to give you guys a couple of shout-outs. First of all, biggest shout-out, of course, to Sennheiser. These guys have been helping us all season long. And, of course, you can grab some of the gear that the players use themselves, 10% off by using code hi-rez.
And those Sennheiser headsets are nothing to not want. I mean, everything about them, great sound, great audio quality. So all around, very strong thing.
A lot of fun stuff. As I mentioned, this is what it all comes down to. The regular season feeds directly into Super Regionals, and Super Regionals, well, that feeds right into hi-rez Expo. hi-rezexpo.com. Grab your own tickets. Just a couple left. Use code SPL25 to save yourself a quarter off the tickets.
And if you're thinking about going to hi-rez Expo and you really want to go, now is not the time to hesitate. These tickets have been getting released in waves and waves and waves. The last one just jumped off. So if you've been wanting to go, now is the time to do it.
Yeah, and don't forget, there's more than just a ticket. Of course, the digital loot pack, one of the bigger things that you're going to be taking a look at. Super Regional skins. The past skins is really what I'm looking at. You get the Energy Chronos from last year, and of course, the Epsilon from the year before, and then the original, our community manager, MLC Top Damage himself, represented there in the Scylla.
I love hi-rez top damage and that Cogsilla skin. So many people have been asking me about that one in particular. So for you guys that have been wondering about the Cogsilla, now's your chance.
Yeah, you know, it was funny. Like, once upon a time, Cogsilla was sort of like the meme. Like, everybody, yeah, everybody has a skin code, ha, 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 ha. But years later, now it's hard to find. So that digital loot pack, absolutely something you want to check out. And, of course, digital loot, you can also buy it via not free points, fantasy points. Not as free as they used to be. Hinduman used to get up here and just say, free FP week every week.
There is nothing free about the predictions for these teams lately.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the fantasy points, I mean, it's a little bit of Russian roulette trying to figure out which is going to turn up to be the winner. But I think all around, it's still very strong for these teams to get those fantasy points going on.
Long week. Won't even say weekend. We're starting off today. It's Wednesday, right? It's Wednesday? Yeah.
It is Wednesday.
I'm coming off of a long trip, but it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Let's take a look at the games that we're going to be seeing today. Just 2 sets of 5 here. Europe will be a little bit later on. We're going to start things on the North American side. eUnited versus Trifecta is going to be the first match that we take a look at. Later on, we'll see Barracuda and his squad take on Space Station Gaming. And in between, we're going to see Patch Notes and the Caster.
The Patch Notes is also something you guys don't want to miss out on. There is a lot of exciting stuff coming out in today's Patch Notes, so make sure that you guys are tuned in for that as well. It's going to be a pretty fun break from the games.
Yeah, it's a hard start at 3 p.m., so make sure you're here. And like I said, the Caster, I hosted the damn thing, so I'm going to be showing up and saying hi to some of the folks. I'm going to be joined by Ron Jobert and Gabriella La Tigress, Devia Allen, who, of course, are our finalists, plural. But today, we're going to find our finalist, singular. So absolutely don't want to miss that one. Esports, that's what we're here for. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Barracuda and LG will take on Space Station a little bit later. Why don't we touch on how that matchup is going to go? Barracuda and his squad have looked really strong this year.
It's just crazy to think that out of all the teams that are being brought in for today, I mean, these were the top 4 teams from North America, and now they finally have their chance to duke it out for Worlds. Luminosity in particular has really been gearing Barra. You know that he wants to make that stand out again. He's always coming back to these Worlds events, and he's always having a great performance at them. Can he run it back? I think the answer is yes.
I mean, Barracuda and his team, like I said, I keep saying Barracuda and his team, and I mean that because he is the lifeblood of the squad. Him and his team won Worlds 1, of course, and then, well, we know what happened as far as energy in Europe is concerned, just sort of taking over the world. But here, this season, I see a new hunter. I see a new team. I see a lot of talent surrounding that dual lane that we know is oh so dominant. And I think going forward, LG is going to be a force to be reckoned with. However, standing in their way, on paper, the superstar of Space Station Gaming.
And, I mean, you can't count out Space Station Gaming in the slightest. This is a very talented mechanical roster when you break it all down. I mean, Andister, Homofe, Zapman. There is just so much talent surrounding that team that it comes at no surprise to anyone, I think, that this is probably going to be one of the more pivotal matches for Space Station Gaming's career.
Exactly. And, you know, when it comes down to it, Zapman is a guy that has always flourished on land, right? We saw this team sort of stutter step during the regular season, and I think a lot of people sort of look at this, and if you just take a look at the stats, the pure numbers, you sit there and go, well, duh, LG is going to smoke this team. But when it comes down to it, there's a certain intangible, right? That X factor of bringing Zapman to land, bringing Jigs to land. So, I don't know, that one's going to be kind of tough to call.
It's unfair to the audience at home when it comes to trying to predict the outcome because they can't feel the tension in the studio right now. These players have all been ready to go for a very long time since they arrived on Monday even,
Yeah.
and so now that it's finally their time to shine, whether or not they're going to come out on top is a completely different story.
We'll be waiting for that set on bated breath. First, though, we'll handle our first set. eUnited versus Trifecta. And this one is going to be, again, really, really exciting. I think these teams are really evenly matched. Trifecta seems to be sort of I guess you would call Snoopy sort of the de facto guy, right? But Trifecta seems to be just a group of 5 players, which is very similar to what we see over on eUnited. PolarBearMike tends to sort of be this hard leader, but again, a real strong unit.
And for Trifecta, though, this is going to be their first LAN event together as a team since DreamHack Valencia, and I think that that's going to be a really important step up for them to have to make. I mean, they brought on Aror, they brought on Kiki. Now is their chance to really show just how much improvement they've actually been able to make going from LAN environment to LAN environment.
Of course, their counterparts across the way will be eUnited. Benji has been a standout player, I think, on that squad, but PolarBearMike is the one leading him. And I bring that up very importantly because Benji, Virizial, these guys tend to be very strong players, but I kind of view them as sort of like a railgun, where they're so powerful, but you really need the right person to sort of lead them into battle and make them successful, and PBM has absolutely proven to be that guy.
eUnited picking up PBM was probably one of the best things this team could have done because
Agreed.
PBM can still bring in that leadership factor that they once had way back in the day when General Payne was running the team, but PolarBearMike still does a great job keeping everybody level-headed, and that's probably one of the most important factors about him is that he really knows how to bring his team back in. United, it's not really a secret that the team has historically had a couple of behavioral issues with players before, but
Yeah.
the team would even agree that PolarBearMike has helped that team substantially with preventing those sort of issues from surfacing again.
I've said it to anybody that wants to listen to me. PolarBearMike, I think, is the best player coach in the entire league. And we've sort of been able to watch him grow. He started his SPL career on the roster next to Zapman in that legendary Team Dignitas team back when they were in North America, and then he finds himself on some lower end teams, starting out as a player, sort of absorbing all of these veterans above him. You know, he's playing next to Anatoly, next to Lazes, next to Zapman, and then all of a sudden he's able to grow and start leading these teams, these lower end teams. And I think eUnited is the first chance that he gets to really step forward and lead a team and actually be a contender. And I think it's been really interesting watching him become this leader, but not just a leader, also a player. His support play also stands on its own legs.
And his support play, again, has also gotten a lot better since he initially came into the Pro League. You can really just tell the development over time when it comes to these players. But, of course, PolarBearMike is not the only one making waves. Trifecta, actually, I mean, we saw their DreamHack Valencia performance, and they actually looked like the best NA team. But then when the split actually came into light, they sort of had that little bit of a wall breaking point where they just never really seemed to push past that barrier of the other NA teams.
With that said, I think LAN environment is really where this team is going to be successful. We saw Aror and Kiki and a group of these guys at the Energy Invitational. I'm going to bring it up. It's an exhibition series. It doesn't mean the world, but there was a lot of money online, and trust me, these guys were playing for ego. When it comes down to Smite plays, I mean, protecting your ego at all costs.
Oh, it's always about the ego.
It's 100% by the ego. Ego through Elo, I think, is a Smite unofficial tagline. But Trifecta is a squad that I think really oh, what's the word? These guys catalyze. These guys go off when it comes down to things that you can't always predict.
I don't think that Trifecta is necessarily a team with the one standout star player, as much as it is everybody on that team is able to perform and come together perfectly. And I think a large part of that is because of this guy on your screen right here, Aror.
Yeah, I mean, he came in the season. He's trials and tribulations, right? He's come in on lower end teams, going all the way back to Fat Chunks Assemble, as is his namesake, Aror the Chunk. And coming into this season, his team, well, they suffered some setbacks, but Aror never one to really sit on the sidelines, took those speed bumps in stride, and then absolutely created a new future for himself.
The second split of this year was just rough. Like, replacing DJ and then losing Zap halfway through the split. When I joined Trifecta, my expectations were making it to Worlds and then being a contender at Worlds, which I think we can do. A lot of us are really good at the game, but the way we convey our thoughts to each other is not always the best way. And if we could figure out a way to communicate and try to convey our thoughts to each other better, then I feel like we've become a really, really good team that way. Around like the week 4, like week 3, week 4 time, like I feel like I finally started meshing with it. It was right around when we played LG, even though we lost to them, I felt like I was starting to mesh more with the team. I try to do things that are like, not even like picking wise, like just in the game, like I'll take some weird path or I'll do something weird, like I'll run one way when they expect me to run the complete opposite way because they think I'm gonna die if I go this way. So I'll literally do something stupid that could turn out good because it's just unpredictable, and I feel like that's what I like to do when I'm playing. Because like you have to be all over the map as a support. You have to be in dual lane, mid lane, solo lane. Like there's so many things you have to be at. You have to be at your own jungler's buffs. You have to help your hunter get his buffs. You have to know where you have to be. You kind of have to, your judgment has to be really, really good, like on where you have to be at on the map, because there's so many things that people want you to do, but you got to pick the most important one at that moment during the game. So I feel like our team's just really innovative in God picks, and I think it's really cool that we can be a team like that.
Unpredictability. That's the takeaway for me here. Aror willing to throw a lot of the traditional to the wayside in order to get that surprise attack, and I think it's worked out for him in Trifecta.
For me, the word that really stuck out that Aror actually chose to use was innovative, and I think that this matchup in particular for Trifecta versus eUnited is going to be even more spectacular because of innovation. If there's anybody else who really loves trying to bring in the surprise factor, it is always going to be PBM.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Aror versus PBM, and even the guys surrounding these players, you've got Verizial, known for his Arachne, Kiki, known for his Arachne. These players really like to bring out the innovation, and one of the big things is that there's method to the madness. Sometimes you see players bring out some weird stuff, and just it seems like for the sake of doing something different. But when you're talking to these two squads, they're bringing out the strange, they're bringing out the oddities because they want to keep their opponents on their toes. They've practiced it through and through, and it's just something that sticking to you got to learn the rules, of course, but then you got to break them, and that's how you find yourself in the victory seat.
Breaking rules is pretty much what I think this set is going to be all about. These teams are really just going to be looking to do something different because they know that the other side is probably going to try and keep cutting the same corner. So whoever ends up coming out on top, I don't think it's going to be from anything that we've seen so far.
Absolutely. Getting into game number 1 very soon. Picks and bans just waiting alongside, and this is definitely one that you want to pay attention to the drafts. I think that some of the other teams here might be a little bit more, I don't want to say boring, but let's say traditional. But when it comes down to PolarBearMike versus Aror, I think that these teams are definitely going to have some fun.
I think that when it comes to these two teams as well, for the fact that eUnited is actually going to be the first one with the first pick, that means that Trifecta, if anything, would probably look to do a little bit more target bans. Normally when you come to a LAN environment, you're not really looking to ban out the stuff that you've been seeing throughout the year or throughout the season. You want to go ahead and try to maybe take away one player's strong points.
Also, don't forget, this isn't the same patch that we've been playing on for a while. The last time we saw these players play was, the Gauntlet. Right?
The gauntlet.
Yeah, so it's certainly something different this
Well,
time around.
eUnited and Trifecta didn't really have to worry about
That's very
that,
true.
but at the same time, that was still a little bit of a telling what kind of meta the scene is sort of shifting towards because of the North American gauntlet, the European gauntlet. I mean, every side has its own flavors, and I think that when it comes to these two teams, there's always a little bit of spice to both of them.
eUnited here, getting things set up with the first ban. Circuit will be taken away, so none of that assassin nonsense. Trifecta options, and they're going to take away Osiris, which I think Osiris is one of the more important bans in this meta, in just any meta. He's just such a bully.
Osiris hasn't really been in too much favor as of lately. I mean, he did receive Warriors in general haven't necessarily been the win-all kind of thing that we've been used to seeing. But for Benji in particular, Osiris is certainly a god I would never want to see him on to have to worry about because he's already a very dominant and aggressive player in the solo lane. Osiris is only going to help him do that tenfold.
So right now we take a look at our third ban, Ho Yi. Just this is interesting. We've seen a little bit of Ho Yi bans come out. He's not necessarily the super hyper carry that has to be banned. This is one of those, well, I just don't really want to deal with Snoopy and his triple bounces. But it's not, I mean, what are they giving up by banning out the Ho Yi?
I think the main thing here for the Ho Yi ban is eUnited knows that they don't really want to opt for that in their first pick option. They're concerned that Trifecta might be able to respond with it. And I think as well that Izanami ban was probably the next best thing that Trifecta could have done because with Ho Yi being taken off the map, not having to worry about that Mark of the Crow, eUnited could have looked for a lot of easy pressure on that Izanami. Instead, it's going to be the Ratatoskr, and this is still super deadly.
Yeah, the Izzy is sort of who everybody's looking at right now, but Ratatoskr, I mean, you said that with fervor. Why are you so afraid of the rat?
The problem with Ratatoskr right now is that he's similar to Circuit, and that's one of the reasons why you see Circuit being banned. They can afford to buy those early Anquiles, the mystical males, be that super tanky aggressive factor because even though they're initiating, they're still dealing a ton of damage, and that's the potent life force behind this pick.
So right now, Ratatoskr also going to be able to not just bring the damage, but also bring the tempo, the pace. Semi-global really allows him to start the team fights, initiate, and then even in the early game, look for those individual ganks. Option over to Trifecta. They've got two selections, and they're thinking through it.
Making sure to use a little bit of that time to think about things, but the Geb and the Najah, loving this combination already. Geb with that little bit of CC between the Shockwave, but more importantly, the survivability option. Najah, I mean, you're so accustomed to having to be that initiating factor, but typically when you're going all in, you're playing that you're posing a large risk to yourself in that you're typically going to end up dying because you might end up out of position from your ultimate, from your sash in. Geb can help you live through that.
And Najah, also one of the absolute strong suits for Trifecta's jungler, Cynosure. Started this season in the PC League, but before that came over from the console side, played Najah both worlds, and kind of crushes it in both worlds on this character. So all-in assassin, certainly the way to go. Aphrodite is going to make a showing here early on this week, and, you know, if it was anybody but Trifecta, I'd sit here and say I'm surprised.
Here's the thing, though, is that this is one of those picks that has been talked about for the entirety of Season 4. Even though the public might not be too aware of that, if you're watching back at home, you're probably just looking at your screen like, Aphrodite, what the hell? But the thing is, Aphrodite, it's mostly about making it past minute 6, 7 in a game. These games for pros have notoriously been going a little bit longer than your standard ranked or casual game. These guys know what they're doing when it comes to positioning. They've got the comms as well to really ensure that there is protection based around those squishier picks. And Afro, while she might be a little susceptible early on to ganks, once she gets going, alongside of the Geb, that's going to be hard to stop.
And, you know, it's a lot of fun. If the Geb wasn't picked here, I would say Aphrodite could go to 3 separate players, support, mid, and solo. So a little scary, but it's absolutely something that Kiki can play in his wheelhouse. Aphrodite now, like I said, I think solo is still a possibility, but we're likely going to see this in the middle lane on Hurriwind, something that we've seen before. So definitely an interesting look and something that might not necessarily be unique to Trifecta this week, but absolutely something that they're bringing out first and early.
Well, eUnited also, though, it can pose a little bit of a threat to Trifecta because with that Morrigan selection, they could technically have an Aphrodite for themselves, and having that ult immunity, most importantly, to keep alive a hypercarry such as Muzen Cobb could be very difficult to handle for Trifecta in a team fight.
At the same time, I feel like the ultimate out of Aphrodite is... if you're going to turn into an Afro and use this defensive ultimate, sure, fine. I would much rather you do that than Thoth me. Or you know what I mean? Like, I would much rather that. Exactly. So that's one of the interesting things when you pick the Morrigan is that all of the selections after the fact, you have to take into account, hey, look, if I bring a Hun Bats to the party, they're also going to have a Fear No Evil. So Trifecta have to be a little bit more cautious about what gods they select.
But the other thing to consider as well is we haven't really seen too much double Ratatoskr ultimates. We saw what happened with the double Camazotz, but Ratatoskr having the possibility to be two of them on the map at the same time is going to make pathing very tricky for Trifecta within even their own jungle. Sure. Having that half global ultimate pretty much on Rat just means that eUnited could technically be anywhere at any time, even engaging maybe in two separate sanctions because you could have a Morrigan splitting off to the duo lane. Meanwhile, you've got Veriziel invading you on your own speed buffs. Which,
at the end of the day, and this is just the eye test, right? For me, eUnited is a team that's... Trifecta is a team that's very good at being aggressive, but when it comes down to it on the defensive side, not exactly their strong suit, which eUnited is going to be in the jungle the whole time. Let's talk Hachiman. This is the new guy. A lot of people have been sitting here telling me, no bueno. Snoopy, one of the strongest hunters in the league, gonna go and select him as Hercules is picked across the way for Benji. Talk to me about Hachiman and the long-range hunter.
I don't know who's been saying that Hachiman's no good because that's probably one of the scariest hunter picks you could possibly be going against right now. His laning phase, incredibly difficult to handle, although if I'm looking at a hunter that could probably go toe-to-toe with him, it's going to be the AMC. AMC could actually be very difficult to handle, at least during the laning phase, but Hachiman just has so much poke-out ability that his wave clear in general, when he brings down that flag, and it just not only kills the creeps and helps you with your own attack speed, but this is also a very strong team fighting asset whenever you're looking to secure objectives and the like. You can have that boosted attack speed from the rest of your team, but more importantly, that ultimate. Hachiman in a competitive environment, you're not going to be waiting for that guy who might be hanging on the backside looking to KS everything with that charging cavalry, but with the Hachiman, you have that possibility to slow multiple targets within that cone, granted that they don't have jumps. And if there's one thing that eUnited don't have, it's any leaps. They're going to have to be trying to cut some very tight turns to try and avoid that.
I love the Ymir last pick to sort of counteract the Artio. Artio is very powerful, but absolutely can get controlled if given the right scenario. We've got commentators standing by real quick. Who's taking game number one, Taco?
I like Trifecta's draft way too much.
Trifecta's draft? I'm going to play it safe and say nothing. Standing by, we've got Hinduman and we've got Aggro. Bring us game number one.
Well, we'll look straight into game momentarily. Trifecta, probably the best team in North America at LAN so far this year, performing well at Valencia. But then we've got eUnited across the way, the #1 seed coming out of the fall split, facing off.
Look, this is not an easy, 1-4 matchup that eUnited just gets to run away with. Trifecta, as you mentioned, looked like the best North American team during that DreamHack Valencia LAN. And that's before they added in Aror. And Aror is one of the winningest players at LAN in North America. He's got plenty of experience here. He's found plenty of success as well. So this is a really potent roster that always has something up their sleeve that eUnited has to be ready for.
Hachiman, we're going to get to see him for the first time in competitive play too. A lot of talk about him, whether he's good or bad. Pros seem to think he's good. When you got something like Snoopy piloting it, known very much for Rama, I'm not surprised to see this going this way.
I'm not surprised that he's a top ADC pick at all. I mean, you look at what he has in his kit. He's got guaranteed damage on that ultimate as well as some good mobility on it. He's got a stun on his 3, which also gives him some mobility. He's got an attack speed steroid for himself, but it also affects his team with that Heavenly Banner. I mean, attack speed steroids are so potent. Look at what Fafnir can do with Coerce. He's been the dominant Guardian for how long? In large part due to that attack speed buff to your teammates. Hachiman can do that for himself and for his allies in just one ability.
Kiki going to be piloting the Ymir in the solo lane here today up against Benji on the Hercules. As well as that, you got Cynosure in the jungle, and now we're good to go with this. Hurriwind, Aphrodite mid. Game 1, and we're on Aphro mid.
Look, as Taco said on the desk, this has been something that's been talked about a lot for a long time. by a lot of players.
Sure.
It isn't just Trifecta. Aphrodite is undeniably strong if you can get her into the late game, and even the mid game, she can become a lot to handle, but it's about getting there. Can Hurriwind stay safe? That's why I love this Geb to keep her safe. I love the Naja as well. That's early pressure, basically guaranteed because of how strong that early Naja clear is.
Well, early on in the mid lane, you can see Venenu is being joined there by PandaCat to clear out the mid wave and get some early pressure on to look to invade the red buff. Trifecta started at their own speed and then head towards the lane in the solo, and PandaCat should be able to get this buff before Snoopy can turn up on Hachiman to find out the red has been taken away.
I like this adjustment by both Trifecta and eUnited. eUnited draft a very strong level 1 push in mid lane. Morrigan's autos make her push level 1 very strong. And then, of course, AMC. That's why he's been so popular in this meta, is because of that level 1 clear. So Trifecta start their speed buff to make sure that that doesn't get invaded, but eUnited immediately just go to the red instead of trying to get pressure on that right-hand side, which is really the whole reason we've seen a lot of teams go for these early mid push comps, is to invade that right-hand side, get the fire elementals, speed buffs, blue buffs, things of that nature. Instead, they realize that that's not where they're going to have their advantage. Let's go to the left-hand side. It seems like a pretty easy idea, but when most teams have been doing one thing and one thing only, to make that adjustment very quickly is nice.
I like the call from Snoopy there, not to push the wave in because he's got no jungle to really farm, so why not just leave it where it was, allow it just to continue to push to him, because he can freeze the wave with the new minion wave coming in. United won't want that to happen, however, so we'll continue to pressure under the tower.
I like the 3 Aegis pickups here by Trifecta. No purification beads for any of the carries or anyone on Trifecta, because Hurriwind can be that purification beads. Aror with the shield can be that purification beads.
That's
Plus,
fair.
there's not a lot of instant hard CC from eUnited. We're talking the stun from PolarBearMike, but that is really close range only on that bear stun. Scream's knockup, a lot of times you'd rather Aegis that than use the purification beads anyways. I like the relic choices here from Trifecta.
Will we see some anti-heal this game coming out from eUnited?
Oh,
I
they
mean,
better.
obviously against Aphrodite, we always end up talking about anti-heal because that can come into play.
They better, and it should be on characters like the Ratatoskr, who have an easy time building that Brawler's Beat Stick and don't lose a lot for building it. That's an easy build path for the Rat in the jungle. Benji probably going to look for a Pestilence. Maybe PolarBearMike could. Even PandaCat, if he wants to go a less ADC-oriented build and more ability style, could go for it.
Well, pressure early on from Screen, looking to potentially put some on towards Trifecta around these elementals. End of the day, though, everybody spots it out. So, first signs of life out of eUnited being the potential aggressors, but, you know, it's game 1 at LAN when your spot for hi-rez Expo is on the line.
Auror's going to blink in, find the knockup onto PolarBearMike. Snoopy's here to try and cut him off, and PBM's in a tough spot.
He's not, he's a bear, but the charge is on from Snoopy. PolarBearMike, though, going to turn this around with the support of PandaCat. PandaCat looking to clean this up, no one's blocking. Snoopy will be first blood in game 1.
The 2v3, and now Aror might be in trouble because Venenu showed up with that Morrigan transformation. A quick 2 kills for eUnited, and that is in an engagement where they were on the back foot. They didn't have the numbers, but that's that damage from AMC in the early game, man. Stinger really shutting Snoopy down early.
Nobody blocked for Snoopy, though. That's what I saw there, like both Hurriwind and Aror, which is unusual to see them both step away and not block for the carry.
Well, the problem is they were fighting 2 characters that had their ultimates available. Well, really 1, because PolarBearMike's a stance switcher who doesn't have a true ultimate. Hurriwind and Aror without their ults means that Hurriwind can't use that Undying Love to make sure that Snoopy can get out of danger. Aror doesn't have Cataclysm to start that damage off right, and they're looking at the bear, and as you mentioned, so tanky in that, and really through all stages of the game. The mobility was there as well. It was a good shutdown by Snoopy, but as soon as he went in with that EI Jutsu, hitting that dash and finding the stun to shut down the dash away from PolarBearMike, immediately all of Trifecta go, wait, that might have been a mistake, because no one's been looking at PandaCat, and he just stingered Snoopy for half his health.
Now, one thing we didn't touch on as well at the start was what PolarBearMike started in terms of build. He started off with Watcher's Gift and then with the Chalice to give him infinite wards, basically, every time he returns to base. We've not seen this for a while, and there's been a lot of discussion from pros both sides of the ocean about whether or not this is a good idea to pick this item up.
I was wondering why I heard a Mealsy screaming from the from the crowd over here. He's a staunch advocate for no Chalice of the Oracle. I think that it can work out if you're backing as often as possible, but the problem with backing as often as possible is that you're losing farm on the map for doing it. You have to spend the time going back to base and walking back. So maybe if you're trying to hit up back camps off cooldown as quickly as possible a lot, that's where you'll get the most value out of this. Now, you will get a lot of regular ward coverage, but it does mean that you have to choose between getting a potion or a sentry ward in that support position, which usually you're going to go for the sentry ward anyways. And Artio is a good character to do it because you're not missing that regen from going something like a health potion, because you have some innate heals in your kit. PBM's just looking to make sure that eUnited get as much map vision as possible, in particular because of the Ratatoskr ultimate, not only from Scream, but from Venenu as well, with that Morrigan ult. That, as long as you've got deep vision in the enemy jungle, you can be really, really aggressive having 2 Rat ultimates.
Now, obviously, with how the game is dictated so far, eUnited got themselves into a pretty good position so far, just over 2,000 gold lead, I'd say. Experience, same sort of story there as well, with the invades working out in their favor. Kiki, though, on this solo lane, is going for the damage Ymir option so far. Went for the penetration boots after the Vampiric Shroud.
Well, Benji having a 2-level lead in that lane doesn't really surprise me. Number one, it's a warrior up against a guardian, so you're used to having the warrior be the dominant factor in that lane, but Benji has just been really impressive at LAN throughout his career.
Yes.
He's had really good performances. He always shows up to play, and that's one of the things that really benefits him.
Lane Cataclysm from Aror in the mid lane, but immediately you'll see the disengage out of eUnited. Scream, though, going to take to the sky. Ratatoskr is Aror in trouble. Ulti's already down from Hurriwind, and it's 3-0 now to eUnited after it was Trifecta that went aggressive.
Great patience there from Scream, waiting out that Undying Love ultimate from Hurriwind. You get more duration on that as you rank it up, and Hurriwind, of course, only going to have 1 point in it so far. Not a long duration. Had to try and time it for whenever Scream was going to come crashing down, but good patience from the jungler for eUnited.
Worked out very well for them. Benji, though, going to pressure Kiki under the tower. Kiki needs to be very careful. That wall was not perfectly positioned, but Benji will not be going for the kill. Has no ultimate available for look for the boulder, which could have ended Ymir's life.
Man, look at Auror's farm right now. Hold that thought as Screams get taken up to the sky by Cynosure. Waiting on the ground are 3 members of Trifecta, and Cyno's going to put him on the board.
Oh, and now Benji's in trouble. The wall was pretty solid, but now Auror's trying to give chase. Driving Strike becomes available for Benji, however, to get him away. Trifecta finally answer back with a kill of their own.
And that's big because they needed one badly, especially Aror needed that assist to get some farm. He was 3 levels down to PolarBearMike early on in this game, and it all goes back to that 3v2 engagement where PBM gets focused and it ends up being eUnited getting 2 kills. That means that PolarBearMike can stay on the map and farm longer. He gets those 2 assists, and the constant pressure on this left-hand side. This has been the concerted effort by eUnited to shut down Snoopy in this game. Leave Benji alone on that right-hand side to handle Kiki all by himself.
PandaCat was actually looking for a lot of pressure with that stinger onto Snoopy. Didn't manage to find it, however. And Snoopy's going to be careful of that. Does have the Aegis, obviously, but it's very difficult to kind of Aegis the stinger coming out straight away. And you can't beads it afterwards, which means EI Jutsu is not available.
But you will have that mounted archery to get you away. It gives you some CC immunity, lots of movement speed, but you're really more worried about the burst damage from Stinger anyways. Take a look at what Benji has gone for in that second item slot, and Kile very early on here to make sure that he can just not get followed up on quite as easily by Aror or by Kiki on that Ymir solo. Plus, this is a more aggressive option. A lot of times when you see warriors up against guardians in the solo lane, they might forego straight magical defense, maybe go for an early hide of the Urchin to give them a little bit, but keep them ready for the later stages. This is Benji saying, I think I can kill Kiki or Cynosure whenever he comes around, so I want some extra CDR and I want some extra power.
Well, the burst coming out from Kiki is going to be Frost, which is going to put, the freeze, which first of all is going to put you in melee range, basically, which means the silence should mean the Glacial Strike can't be followed up from. So it's going to shut down some of Kiki's combos. He's going to have to play around that a little bit now.
At least until the later stages when he's got that freeze maxed out. It's going to be a longer duration. He can outlast that Ankile silence that comes out from the item.
Well, max heals coming out from Hurriwind here. Maxing the doves first of all, then the back off, as you can see on his screen there. No real surprise with how this game's gone so far. eUnited have been looking this way the whole time, but Snoopy is in a bit of trouble here. Tricky situation for him to be in, and he was forced to ult defensively.
That's what you get for walking into the lane with 2 people right there, but he got most of the wave, but this is a good opportunity for United to go right into the Gold Fury. Snoopy poked out a little bit, but more importantly, doesn't have that ult.
Round the back though, Cynosure's on his way on the Najah. The ring toss could come into play here a little bit, but eUnited going to go to zone duty. Immediately Cynosure will catch Scream in the ultimate. The follow-up is not really available. Venenu though now in the sky as well, looking to potentially turn this one around too. I might be confused about which one's which, because there's another rat in the sky as well. Scream was up there.
Cyno in a lot of trouble. Benji's here as well. That Ankile silence goes off, but Cyno's going to be able to escape for the moment. Meanwhile, it's Kiki chasing down eUnited in the back line. Snoopy's going to get credit for 1.
1 for 1 so far. Both mid laners have died. Gold Fury surviving, but Benji's not done. He will be now as Kiki denies him access to continue in the chase.
Love the idea there from eUnited to use both Rat ultimates on the same target. Snoopy, he's got no beads, he's only got the Aegis. So Venenu comes down, knocks him up immediately. Snoopy responds with the Aegis, but then Scream kind of hesitates and doesn't go right for Snoopy. Seems to decide that he wants to zone away everyone else from the rest of the fight because he thought that there would be enough damage from the rest of eUnited to bring Snoopy down. Problem with that is that he went right into the teeth of Trifecta. That's right where they want you, right on top of Hurriwind, where you can get peeled away by Ymir, by Aror on the Geb. And Snoopy ends up living and helping find that kill onto Venenu. Scream needs to just commit to the call there and finish off Snoopy and then take the rest of the team fight as it goes.
Bad news for Trifecta now is the experience difference between these two teams. You can see in the mid lane, there was almost a 2-level difference there between Hurriwind and Venenu. Not only that, Aror versus PBM. Obviously, they started in different lanes, but that experience, 3 levels, is a lot of levels on a support that generally is going to max out around 15, 16.
Most importantly to me is that PolarBearMike's level 11, whereas Hurriwind's only level 9. Yeah. That means that, Aphrodite's not doing burst damage to anyone in the early game, no matter what. But when you're down 2 levels to a support who is already working towards some magical protection, probably going to be either a Genji's or an Oni Hunter Garb in that 3rd item slot, that means that Hurriwind's damage is literally irrelevant to PolarBearMike at this stage in the game. He's already got a Stone of Binding as well. I love this aggressive style of build that he's going for. A little bit of damage, but that Stone of Binding, whenever PBM CCs anybody, everyone around him is going to get that boost of pen.
Snoopy in a bit of trouble here. Panda trying to give chase. Going to drop the high for the extra mobility to continue the auto pressure. Not enough for a kill, but it's enough to force Snoopy back to base. And Scream up to the sky early, was expecting Snoopy to maybe hang around or a rotation out of Trifecta.
Might find a couple here on this top left side. He's going to find 3 with that knock-up, and does force Cynosure. No, it was no CC immunity there from Cynosure. I thought he had that glow. Actually, Hurriwind forced to use the ultimate in that scenario.
Still looking to keep the pressure on his Trifecta here around this Gold Fury to make sure eUnited can't look to continue doing it. Obviously, Gold Fury wasn't done quickly enough, though, so both teams will fall back. eUnited in a very strong position in Game 1.
In that Brawler's Beat Stick already done for Scream. Went for it right as his first item after finishing off that Acorn. Love it, because not only does that shut down the healing from Hurriwind that we talked about, but it affects those Devo Glove heals that Snoopy has gone for. And take a look at the build that Cyno went for. He went for a Gladiator Shield. That heal from Glad Shield now going to be reduced because of the Brawler's Beat Stick. The heal from the Najah 2, the Flaming Spear, going to be reduced because of that Brawler's Beat Stick.
Devour's Gauntlets as well, take that into account. It does affect the sustain coming out for the Hunters too, so anti-heal has been purchased. Also, Venenu, whenever he does turn into Scream, he's going to get the ability to use that too during that, so provide potentially double the amount of anti-heal.
And now the Gold Fury started by eUnited once more. This time Trifecta, not local, going to be tough for them to try and seal it. Snoopy coming around the back, but he can't close the gap. Instead, it's eUnited getting the first big objective.
PolarBearMike zone 2 with the cripple field there more than anything else means Aror can't roll in, but now Panda could be in trouble. The horse is on the chase. Aegis used Cataclysm will force the beads, and into the sky goes Venenu down onto Aror, who used all his combination to try and set up a kill, and in the end, he'll get a trip back to base. Snoopy is going to get pressure onto Venenu, allowing Cynosure to look to clean up the kill, which Hurriwind will secure.
Hurry gets 1, and that's a big kill for him to give him a little bit of extra farm and get towards that potent mid to late game that Aphrodite really needs. Cyno still want to continue this chase on a PBM who decides, yeah, we can take this fight because PandaCat's back and he's full HP.
Cynosure under pressure, and Hurriwind has to ult him defensively, but in the sky doesn't find the ult to Scream there, but it will get PandaCat still in range to pick up another kill. 6-3 at less than 14 minutes in.
An uncharacteristic chase there from Trifecta. No chance they get anything out of that. Maybe the invade on back camps, but to lose Cynosure in that situation, not only losing him, but using Hurriwind's ultimate, using that Aegis on the Najah as well. You got to just accept that you lost the Gold Fury and you traded 1 for 1. Honestly, that 1 for 1 trade, if you just look at the kills, wasn't Trifecta's favor anyway, so no reason to get frustrated and push up that far trying to kill a level 12 Artio.
And now with the Gold Fury being down, you'll see attention on this map more than likely turn towards the Portal Demon area. And that's why the ward wars have already begun around the Fire Giant pit to make sure that no team could look for a sneaky objective.
In the build from PBM and how far ahead he got in the early game, I like to think has affected Auror's build path. He went for a Void Stone early on, and you saw how much damage he just took from Scream's ultimate there after that Blink Cataclysm. He's very squishy to Scream on the Ratatoskr, to PandaCat on the AMC, and that's where the early game damage is really going to be coming from from eUnited. I was very surprised that Aror didn't go for something like a Jade Emperor's Crown to try and reduce that physical power and give himself some protection against it. Because keep in mind, Venenu probably is not going to be fighting you in the early game unless he's got transformation. And who's he transforming into? Ratatoskr. So that Void Stone doesn't really give Aror a lot of protection at this stage.
It's funny because I felt Venenu this game and this Morrigan would have a potential. It's an important game for him.
Yes.
Target selection of who to turn into with this ultimate at all times of this game is going to be so important. Do I go for someone on my team like Scream for initial engage or even secondary engage? Whereas turn into Trifecta, do I want to be tanky with Aurora and protect people, or even Hurriwind to resustain somebody up? Naja to take someone out of the fight. A lot of pressure to play a Morrigan in the first game here. So far so good though. Hasn't really had to do anything apart from turn into the rat.
Well, talking to the guys on eUnited, the thing that they really like about Ven is how flexible he is and how he can play a lot of different roles for them, whether it's being that carry mid laner or trying to be that supportive guy and just set up or finish off whatever Scream starts. And Morrigan fits that playstyle perfectly.
Scream to the sky early on, looking to collapse on Aurora. Will get in range to get hit by a Cataclysm, and then a wall from Kiki to follow up. Cynosure around the back though will get a ring toss, but realize that the rest of his team not really in a position to help out. The pressure was from eUnited to allow them to stop this portal demon.
Snoopy's in mid, but he's not going to get here in time. It's only Cynosure even close, but it doesn't matter. United is going to get that portal demon free and easy.
And Mike's fighting against Cynosure now. Earthbreaker will connect from Benji there. Driving strike was beezed away. Cynosure though looking to pick up PolarBearMike, and Snoopy credited with a kill so far. Hurriwind under a lot of pressure and sustained from Kiki, or slow I should say, allows Hurriwind to escape only for a moment. Scream's about to go down too. This fight for Trifecta is swinging on its head. 4 for 1, but the portal demon goes the way of eUnited.
This might be Fire Giant Hindu. Only PandaCat here. He's half HP, but no relics on this AMC. So Trifecta just need to look for him. As soon as he comes in, just kill the bee. You don't need to try and do the Fire Giant until PandaCat's dead.
But Panda's just got to delay. If he can delay them from doing it enough, it means respawns through the portal demon onto a secure. It's getting low. Panda's coming in to poke him out, get their attention again. Now PolarBearMike's back up too, and Trifecta have a call to make. Do we commit? They come in, and the Fire Giant will go to Trifecta. Kiki will die for it. This might not work out as well as Trifecta were hoping, because PBM and Panda could continue the pressure with the teammates now respawning.
But Snoopy is going to escape underneath that tier 2. Kiki, the sacrifice for Trifecta's Fire Giant. What a fight. Going
scary.
Trifecta's way. And that's Cynosure finding PBM in that early fight. Now that's where that aggressive build with the Stone of Binding and going for some magical defense right off the bat for PolarBearMike ends up kind of biting him there. It's Cyno who really does a ton of damage very, very early on with that ultimate onto PolarBearMike. Now that PBM falls, everyone else is just immediately in trouble. PandaCat forced out of that fight early on, and it's just the target selection from Trifecta was really, really good. Plus, that Aphrodite ultimate, the heals, the focus was onto Hurriwind, but it took him so long to die that everyone else from Trifecta was able to capitalize, and that's what Aphrodite does. Early game, we're down. Kind of sucks, but eventually it's going to be hard to kill him, especially with that Chronos pendant that Hurriwind had gotten just before that last team fight. Means those cooldowns are coming, and they're coming quick.
Now this Fire Giant doesn't mean that Trifecta control the game, but it will bring him back into it, looking to go for the Gold Fury. Commit onto PolarBearMike, who's taken to the sky from Cynosure early on. Tanky enough to sustain, though. A Scream gets focused on the backside as well. PolarBearMike will get away for now. Kiki still giving chase on Panda. Great use of the Acorn from Venenu to try and peel for PandaCat, but he's gonna get him killed in the process. Trifecta with the Fire Giant buff now return to the Gold Fury.
Man, Cyno doing work in that team fight, finding the ultimate onto PolarBearMike, and a little bit too much focus this time in my mind from Trifecta onto eUnited support. Doesn't end up coming back to bite them because of a great ultimate from Hurriwind. That time, right on the target, using that Undying Love to make sure that Snoopy doesn't get knocked up by that Ratatoskr ultimate. That's all in the name of baiting eUnited in to try and save PBM's life. And it almost worked out to get a PBM out and escape with all their lives, but Cyno with a clutch ring toss slowed everyone down, nearly killed Panda and Ven with just one ability.
Love the work from Kiki there, just to sit in the jungle and make sure eUnited can't look to defend this tier 1 tower on the left-hand side so easily. The wall coverage will let them know that eUnited wrapping around the back and the trap has been set. Kiki on the front line looking to wall, chooses the defensive wall not want to isolate a team member here. Pressure relieved for a moment.
And that's because Cynosure is on the right-hand side of the map, and he's been so critical in these team fights for Trifecta, and that's no surprise. Think back to their set against Energy at DreamHack Valencia. Cyno had a beautiful game on Naja on that land setting, in a game where his KDA didn't look great, but he was all about that setup, all about that initiation for Trifecta. This time his KDA looks good, and he's doing a great job at the initiation.
Kiki under pressure, walls himself into the pit, surrounded by everybody, going to ult early on. Driving strike still available for Benji, though, and now there it is onto Kiki. Full collapse onto KikiSoCheeky. He ain't cheeky no more. Cynosure's turned up, though, and this could turn around. Remember, 4 members with the Fire Giant.
Good ult there by Aror, but it's actually Trifecta who now need to get on the run. Nice driving strike there from Benji. Hurriwind falling low, and Panda's going to clean him up.
So even with the Fire Giant, eUnited just grouped up better earlier on, picking off Kiki too early, who was just too far forward, in my opinion, maybe just slightly out of position. So now it's eUnited back on the aggressive again, going to backdoor this Tier 1 tower.
That's the power of staying grouped, even when another team has the Fire Giant. I mean, Cynosure and Hurriwind, they're on the right-hand side. Kiki kind of dilly-dallying there in the jungle and just backpedaling a little bit too much for my liking. Needs to try and turn around and just get out of danger in that situation. Trifecta looked like, yeah, maybe we could take this fight. I mean, remember, we've got Fire, but United had the numbers.
3 towers! 3 towers for eUnited there, and they weren't just Tier 1 towers that were weakened either. Tier 2 on the left-hand side goes down. We all know the Tier 2 tower on the left is so important. Why? Exposes the Phoenix furthest away from the Fire Giant.
And it means that the next Gold Fury fight is going to be a little bit easier for you to take. I mean, look at how both towers in the dual lane are still up for eUnited, and Trifecta's, they're both down. So if it's a Gold Fury skirmish in that mid to late game, you don't have anywhere to run as Trifecta anymore, especially with that Tier 1 tower in mid being down.
PandaCat, 15k player damage already in this game. Really putting the AMC to work. Let's have a listen into Trifecta here at this Portal Demon as they look to take it down.
I have a free.
I'm heavenly.
Nice.
They're gonna fight this.
I have shell.
Well, I guess the listening wasn't as good as I was hoping for. Apologies for that, but the Portal Demon did go the way of Trifecta, and they will back away immediately as well, which is very important to give themselves the opportunity for eUnited to just collapse and realize there's no pickings to be had this time round.
This time, that's the right call for Trifecta. They get Scream's ult. Even PandaCat was using that engagement. Hurriwind had to use his, as did Kiki, but look at how much CDR Hurriwind has. The Sands of Time, the Chronos Pendant, that's 30%, and that's not factoring in that Chronos Pendant passive where every 10 seconds, a second comes off of all of your cooldowns that are down at that moment. So really closer to 40% for Hurriwind on that Aphrodite. So that ultimate being down, not a big eUnited.
So with how this game's gone so far, eUnited dominated the early game. Mid-game, there was a shift of power momentarily from Trifecta with that Fire Giant going down, which realistically just evened things up for a moment with the Gold Fury that followed. But then eUnited just went back to what they've been doing so far. Trifecta, though, are they on a clock, or is it eUnited that's on the clock with this Aphrodite?
In my mind, it's eUnited who's on the clock, because Aphrodite is going to get even stronger with damage. And right now, she's already doing plenty of healing. She's already keeping everybody alive, and it's very difficult to handle. But back off is one of those moves that is really sneaky in terms of damage output in the later stages of the game. As soon as Hurriwind gets some penetration in that build, gets a Rod of Tahuti in that build, he's going to be really hurting whoever Cynosure takes up into the sky. That's a big part of this combo, is keeping Link to Cyno. He hits the Windfire Wheels ultimate, and then that's guaranteed back-off damage on top of the Naja ultimate damage, and that's going to result in a dead AMC, a dead Morrigan, a dead Rat. It doesn't really matter who it is. They're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Well, Lee and I believe that so far all they really need is that Brawler's Beat Stick to deal with it. The build's coming along quite nicely. I don't really think we're going to see eUnited pick up too many more anti-heal items in their build. Maybe something for Benji in terms of, I don't know,
a Pestilence. I'd really like to see a Pestilence from either PBM or Benji here.
Good catch on Snoopy there from Benji. Driving strike onto
stun.
2 in the sky as a Ratatoskr. I don't know which one it is. It was Scream this time round. Big shield from Aurora onto Hurriwind to get him away. Kiki on the front line, just going to weather the storm of the beatdown. But an Earthbreaker again from Benji will bring Kiki into trouble. The big shell coming into play there from eUnited to make sure it absorbs some of this damage. This fight is still going.
Ven transformed into the Hercules and pulled Kiki back, but still not enough damage. Those Aphrodite heals too strong. Cyno in some trouble, but a really nice ring bounce. Big damage coming out of Trifecta, but PandaCat's still alive.
The sustain on PandaCat is insane. Take into account the Assy and the Devourer's Gauntlets. He just whacked away to stay alive in that engagement. In the end, Kiki falls down. eUnited turn their attention back towards the Fire Giant.
But Cyno's still pretty healthy here. Doesn't have that ultimate, but Hurriwind's here with him and trying to step up and stop this fire push, but Benji's there, PBM is there. No way for either of these players to get in. Fire Giant goes down, and it's eUnited.
And Benji just let them walk in like, come into my lair. Come this deep and we'll take your life as well. Make it now a 3v5. With a Fire Giant and all members of eUnited. Gold Fury's up too. Like we said earlier, the left-hand Phoenix is exposed, but might as well take a tier 2 in mid first.
I mean, we're always talking about Trifecta's sustain, but how about the sustain from eUnited's composition? Hercules has got plenty of self-sustain. It's PolarBearMike's sustain on that Artio that helped keep PandaCat alive in the middle of that. That energy surge, the life tap, all of those making it easier for him to stay up.
Bit of pressure here now for Snoopy, who's a little bit too far forward. Doesn't have his ultimate available or his Aegis. Just the beads was there, and with him dead, it's now more opportunity for eUnited to pressure some more. Game 1's looking good for them.
It really is. And Trifecta has a lot of stuff that they can take into Game 2, whether they win or lose, and say, we did this really well, but they've got to be a little bit more wary of how much damage PandaCat has been doing in this set. 21,000 player damage, nearly 22,000. That's no surprise. PandaCat has the highest average player damage of any NA player. He's over 21,000 average player damage per game at LAN. No one else is even at 20K. I mean, it's a significant margin between PandaCat and everybody else.
And going back to what you were saying about the sustain as well, I think the reason we don't look at eUnited's sustain in their composition is because most of it is personalized sustain. The Assy for PandaCat, which came into play. Obviously, a little bit from PolarBearMike. He's the only one that's really healing the team in any way. And Hercules as well. I guess that's one of the things we've overlooked. Because you're always looking at the ones that are going to heal your teammates more, like the Aphrodite.
Exactly. And it can be tough to really punch through those Afro heals for everyone on the team. But I mean, Hercules is one of the hardest gods to kill in the game, no doubt. There's so much tankiness, so much healing on that mitigate wounds, and plenty of protection with that build that he's gone for. Did pick up a Pestilence in that final item slot, so this next team fight is that much more stacked in eUnited's favor.
Best of 5 this today, boys and girls. Winner of this set will go to hi-rez Expo. They'll play again on Sunday, however, to determine seeding in their region against the other winner of today's matchup, which is also, obviously, a best of 5. eUnited, though, came in as favorites after the split, and so far they're showing why they were the favorites.
And the most impactful thing for me, the most encouraging thing for me if I'm an eUnited fan, would be how well Screammmmm has played in this game. Screammmmm historically has struggled at LAN. His deaths per game at LAN is nearly 5. His regular season, less than 3. It's a big difference between his regular season and his LAN stats, but his performance in this game has been very solid. How well can he respond whenever eUnited go down? Interested to see that, but so far, so good for eUnited's jungler.
Well, eUnited going to abuse the fact of having a semi-global ultimate on their team. Screammmmm going to hang around the mid lane here. Easy for him to transfer towards this fight on the right-hand side if it happens. Surprised, though, that we're seeing eUnited group up on the right-hand Phoenix and not the left here.
Well, the minion waves are pushed up in mid and right, and you want to be able to walk in with those minion waves.
Let's have a Sennheiser listening to eUnited as they look for this Phoenix.
I'm on Ymir. I'm keeping Snoopy out. Get Phoenix. I'm on Afro. This is kind of weird.
That's Hachiman. Hachiman dash away.
Yeah, careful. This is kind of weird.
Can we just hit it?
They were Ymir rolling it.
Should we just get portal back? Just back. We only have 30 seconds back off.
They're gonna notch out chase maybe.
Listen, I'll get
Shadow
divine.
doesn't have blink.
Let's get their buffs. I'll get divine rune here. It's fine.
So now with that, they don't manage to get the Phoenix whatsoever aggro. In the end, they have to just fall back, take the Portal Demon. The scraps, really. The scraps that they would have preferred to have as a tasty dessert rather than the main course.
I'll tell you what, Phoenix Sieges are tough, man. In this late season 4, the Phoenix Sieges are so hard because of how tanky those Phoenixes are, how well entrenched these teams have become at defending their Phoenixes in situations like this. I was talking to multiple players yesterday, and they were all saying that how well you can siege and how well you can defend sieges is a big separating factor in top teams. So Trifecta doing that is a good sign.
Is that some of the idea of team comps that are getting built around some defensive options as well? Because I look at Trifecta's roster here, you know, the lineup they've got. their clear isn't that bad from range, you know, in terms of defending these. Obviously, you've got Kiki to group them all up if you need with the wall, for example, and he can clear a wave on his own as a Ymir. But they've also got Cynosure and Snoopy who have a lot of range in their kit, you know, with the ring toss as well as Snoopy's crazy range with the banner, as well as those autos to make sure that when eUnited want to come in for it, they have to pretty much tank it.
Yeah, that's certainly important, is how well you can clear the wave from a distance and how safely and how important the cooldowns that you're using really are. I mean, Snoopy using Heavenly Banner at this stage, not that big of a deal. He's still going to be able to put out his damage. Now, Hurriwind on the Aphrodite doesn't necessarily want to use those birds to clear the wave because he needs it for the healing for himself and his teammates. So it's really going to be on guys like Snoopy, like Cynosure, to clear that wave so that Hurry can hold that important cooldown.
Well, Trifecta will know this Fire Giant has been started and when the spawn time was. And eUnited will not be contested here. Trifecta seem to be happy about the way the defense went.
Take a look at what PandaCat did. He sold his boots for a Magi's Blessing, really not valuing movement speed in the late stages of the game. Using the hives, using the hives as that additional movement speed, instead opting for some extra protection. And you know what? It makes a lot of sense. I mean, what do boots give you in the late game? Extra protection because of movement speed. Not actual protections, but movement speed to get away from the opposition. Magi's Blessing, giving yourself some extra defense, giving yourself that CC immunity bubble that has to be popped off. Not a bad idea here from PandaCat.
The old Season 1 build from the Hunters coming into play, and it wasn't just Hunters. I mean, Mages were doing this with the Magi's Blessing. It's an additional beads, is the best way of looking at it. You've got to pop it first of all, like Aror just did then. And that's the one thing about this, though, is that your mobility is reduced, as we mentioned, which means it's easier to take that off with someone like Geb, with someone like Ymir, to then have you go, okay, well, it's not going to be useful now.
Ooh, Hurriwind takes a big chunk of damage right off the bat. He's got to use his ultimate as Kiki right into the back line, gets the purification beads out from PandaCat.
Snoopy.
But Scream, no, it's Ven with a big ult.
Yeah, Ven with a big ult, but Scream was also zoning away Snoopy out of this fight completely. Cynosure went to PandaCat there, but Panda's going to be able to weather the storm as per usual. It's Kiki that's getting low. Knocks back, however, from Hurriwind to make sure Kiki gets away. Freeze is good. Phoenix still stands at the moment, but still all 5 members of eUnited are still sieging.
Benji trying to tank this up, allowing PandaCat to get in there and use the autos. Nice big push there by Benji again, but it's PandaCat who gets the kill.
Snoopy on the front lines, though, has to deal with members of the back. Aror, they're looking to try and kill PandaCat and can't do so. Panda hits him with the bees, and the bee makes sure that the actual Geb falls down. This could be a game right now, Aggro.
Game 1 is all eUnited. Trifecta did their best and almost made the comeback happen as it's Cyno trying to give the last-ditch effort, but eUnited end up on top. That was close, though. Trifecta's composition nearly pulled it off.
But it didn't pull it off in the early game. That was the biggest thing I saw there. They really struggled in that early game to try and get through the early phase. They expected probably to be behind with a Geb Afro. Like, they're not going to be the most dominant.
Right, but once they get that Fire Giant, it's, you know, nearly 20 minutes or so around that mark, and you're starting to get a little bit closer. You get a Gold Fury. You've basically evened up the gold deficit. That's when that composition really should start to really push through. But it was a good team fighting from eUnited that made sure that that never happened from Trifecta. Benji, for me, the unsung hero of this game for eUnited. How many fights did he start off with that 2-1 combo, pulling someone in, pushing 3 members around by the speed buff? Even Venenu did his best impression, pulling in Kiki another time after he tried to get away. Benji did such a good job of frontlining, of controlling, of being that nuisance. I believe he only had 1 death, and that was when everyone else from eUnited had already fallen.
Really good performance from eUnited for game 1. Obviously, best of 5. That's the big key here. Best of 5, so these guys are going to be going at it for a little while now. They're going to get a moment to have a talk. What do you reckon the conversation is going to be?
Someone's got to come over and check PandaCat because he's doing too much damage right now. And that's the problem with this, with the meta right now of leaving your hunter alone, not putting any pressure over there. You allow a guy like PandaCat who is comfortable on land, who does tons of damage, and is able to play that aggressive style to really do whatever he wants. And that's why a eUnited strategy was so good, because they didn't allow Snoopy to do that. PandaCat was getting free farm. Snoopy wasn't. Who had the bigger impact in the late game? It was PandaCat.
Well, while these players get themselves ready for game 2, we're going to head back to the desk where Tom and Taco are here to break it down a little bit further for you all.
Tug of war here, I think, between eUnited and their opposition for game number 1. eUnited kind of always sort of felt like they had the gold lead, but Trifecta able to bounce back here and there a couple of times.
And Trifecta, I think the most important part to note was after they were able to secure that Fire Giant, it seemed as though things were really about to shift in their direction. And had they actually maintained that Fire Giant siege potential, then I think a lot of things would have actually come to fruition for them. The Aphrodite Geb would have basically become unkillable because Aror and Hurriwind everyone would have finally caught up in experience and farm, having the gold to buy those items. It's what makes those gods so dangerous. Kiki ends up dying. And that's pretty much the end for Trifecta.
You know, and it was interesting because it was one particular fight. Trifecta have the fire giant, right? And they goad eUnited into a team fight sort of on the lower end side by invading the enemy jungle. And everything went well because eUnited should have taken that fight. But this was the fight after the fact. And Kiki sort of baits everybody into this purple buff. And his team doesn't collapse soon enough, so Kiki just winds up falling down.
Trifecta, the rest of them kind of recognize that they couldn't afford to go into that sort of pit. That's like an ideal scenario for Ratatoskr, especially with that double Ratatoskr ultimate. Initially, when eUnited, I mean, we can call it a slight Game of Thrones if you really want to break it down, because eUnited should have never really been in that position in the first place. They got every single camp that they wanted for the global farm early game. There just really wasn't a way for Trifecta to contest them. But that fight after they secured the first portal demon, then eUnited, Venenu actually went up into the air on that Ratatoskr ultimate, goes into the back line. No one's there to check him from his team and make sure he's safe. He ends up getting picked off by Snoopy, and I mean, we know what happens next. Trifecta gets that fire giant, but the fact is, when Kiki gets picked there, that stops their composition entirely. Whenever you go for that Aphrodite Geb selection, you're banking a lot on the team staying together, and it just wasn't really able to happen because as soon as Kiki dies, there's really nobody left to make sure that Hurriwind stays unharmed.
Which I really liked this draft. I liked this composition. If I'm Trifecta, I don't think that was the issue. Again, that replay that we just looked at, I think that was the singular moment where Trifecta had it and lost it. And you know, I was sitting there and I was talking to two different groups of players, and it was funny how, depending on who you talk to, it was split down the middle. I said it looked like Kiki was trying to draw eUnited in, which he did, and then the team failed to collapse. A couple of other people that were out in the audience, you know, a couple of players were like, no, it looked like Kiki went all by himself, and you know, he shouldn't have been there in the first place. So I think either way you look at it, somebody didn't respond. And the lack of response is what I'm looking at if I'm Trifecta. Come game number 2, picks and bans be damned, I just got to make sure that somebody is following up.
From a player perspective, I would probably never want to see Kiki there because jungle fights just aren't your forte whenever you're playing that kind of composition. You're just relying on open spacing. You want to rely on your Aphrodite being able to kind of just run all around the map. You don't want to have her forced into an area where it's very easy to lock her down. That's why I think we saw so much at Trifecta just hovering that T2 tower line.
Right.
Because they wanted to save Kiki, but they already recognized that PBM was just too far into the engagement. If anybody pushes forward, you're caught in that Kerple field, and then you're caught up by Screammmmm on that Ratatoskr. It was great also utilization there by Venenu on that Morrigan ultimate, really getting to see her come back into light. Absolutely love seeing those kind of combinations also come into play because double rat ults, that's painful.
Sure, double